Hiet, thank you for
Hello?
agreeing to joining my interview today. The purpose of this
Yeah,
interview is very simple. It's just going to be me asking you a few questions about your entrepreneurial mindset, because I believe you possess that
okay.
mindset, and your entrepreneurial endeavor if you have one. So let's get started. Can you give me a quick introduction about your background?
Okay, so I'm Kiet Lei. I'm Thai's older cousin. I'm an employee at an accounting firm. I'm 35 years old. And I was born in a rural village when young. And I moved to the city for university.
And can you share an example of a time when you identified a problem in your life?
A problem. Well, on the top of my head, one of the biggest, I guess, most memorable problem that I encountered and eventually find a solution to was like, okay, so after the Vietnam War, people were having a lot of kids, right?
Right?
Including and my wife. And so when I went to the hospital for my wife to give birth to my child, while waiting, we were near the entrance of the hospital. I saw a lot of kids going to other health department for vaccination, surgery, and they were very loud, crying, wouldn't stop. And so amongst the crowd, I saw a baby quietly and happily playing with a toy, right? And I didn't think much about it until later, but at the time I was very stressed, so I just wanted the kid to shut up. And
Right.
so I looked around and I saw that there were no toy shop nearby, and the only one closed were the Lego, official Lego shop, My Kingdom, that kind of stuff, which was too expensive for most people at the time because we were in a poor people hospital.
Right. So what did you do after seeing that issue? Like, did you came up with an innovative solution to that?
Well, honestly, nothing. I waited for my wife to give birth and stayed in the hospital. Well, until one night after the baby was born, I was sitting next to a wife who had just given birth. She was sleeping and had nothing to do, so I sat and a baby in the room, which is a very big room, which with about 20 small beds. A baby cried, and that kind of crying reminded me of the baby holding the toy. I sat there and I looked into the wall, just thinking what I could do to make these babies stop crying so that my wife could sleep better.
Right. So how did you approach the situation? And what was your thinking process when approaching this problem?
Well, I tried looking around for things that I have or in the room that could make the baby stop crying. And I remember there were a colorful badge that I picked up a few days ago on the ground. So I came up to the baby's mother and gave her the badge. The baby saw the colorful badge and she immediately stopped crying and started to put the badge on his cheek and went to sleep smoothly.
Right. And did this event allow you to identify any potential opportunity?
Well, after giving the baby the toy, I went back to my chair and I thought of how impressive toys could be. You know, then I started to worry that the other baby in the room might start crying again. So I look around trying to find something colorful that I could use to make toys for any other babies that would disturb my wife's sleep. And that was when I looked out the corridor to see the leaf near the balcony. And
Right.
I is in my mind, in my head, I went there to pluck a few leaves on a tree that was reachable from the hospital balcony.
Hmm.
And I went back into the room and started shaping the leaves to look like animals.
Oh, wow. That is very innovative. Right. So what did you face any challenges while making these animal-shaped leaf then?
Well, of course I did. It wasn't without some difficulty, as I hadn't made these images before. And I remember breaking about 30 leaves before finally getting one right. It's not easy at all.
You mentioned that you failed 30 times before you get one right, right?
Yeah?
So, how did you persevere in this situation where I believe a lot of people would just give up simply because of their failure and then start to blame it on their lack of skills?
Well, I simply didn't blame or demotivate myself for the failures and just continued with the thought of making as much leaf toy as possible in my mind because, I had a reason, a very strong reason.
Well,
And it was to calm down the babies, to
right,
ensure that my wife gets the sleep she needs.
right. Well,
And
it's
with the strong reason, I was able to persevere after, breaking, how many leaves to try to make a single toy. So I think the important thing you need when trying to persevere through a very tough situation is always have that why. A strong why will, ensure that you'll be able to persevere through any difficulty you have.
right. Well, it seems like you're very clear that you have a goal. And I can see that you're really emphasizing on that why.
Yes.
So, what did you do with those toys afterwards? I'm kind of curious now that you've produced them, from your knowledge and resource available to you.
Well, after some time, I stacked a bunch of them next to my chair to prepare for any baby that would cry that night. And the following night, well, the next day, a few parents from the other room heard of my toys and started to come and ask if I could make some for them. Well, at first, I gave out the toys for free, right? But after seeing that there were high demands, that we were in need of money, I started to sell those toys to buy food for my wife. And I, of course, had a low price. Well, within the week that I had to stay at the hospital to look for my wife, I sold about 150 of such leaf animals to parents from the other room who heard about my toys.
Wow, 150. I'm actually so impressed. So, from what you've said, it seems like you're very quick-witted and good with leveraging the resources available, despite not having much on yourself at the time. So, has resource management always been a skill that you possess, or was it developed at that time when you needed it?
Well, though I've done a lot of resource management since I was a child, due to my poor family financial situation. I came from a very poor family, you know, as similar to many other people in the Vietnam War post era. So we couldn't really make a lot of money for us to get food and resources. So I've always had to plan and use resources around me sparingly. I felt like my creativity and judgment were really enhanced at that moment when there was a really strong drive to solve a problem where I can't fail, which was a baby crying, which was disturbing my wife's sleep.